everyone, and welcome to the 2026 Speakers Inc. Summer Virtual Showcase Series. My name is Lerato Ditsejo. In case you were wondering who the fine specimen of a human creation is, I am a certified 10 out of 10, undisputed head girl in charge. I am an entrepreneur, a speaker, and a coach. So today, I have the great honor of introducing to you Lauren Davis, a clinical psychologist and mental health coach. She has more than 2 decades experience supporting senior leaders, HR teams, and complex organizations. Her clinical background sets her apart in the leadership and well-being space, bringing a depth of psychological understanding that goes far beyond the generic wellness advice. Her work is grounded in a very clear belief, which is that well-being is not just a luxury or a nice to have. It is actually a strategic advantage that directly shapes performance, decision-making, and culture. So I cannot tell you how excited I am to unpack this topic. You know, she has such an inviting topic. So Lauren will be unpacking a topic that most of us are all too familiar with. And that topic is the culture of busyness, or as she likes to say, the cult of busyness. So things like wearing exhaustion as proof of busyness, but at what cost? So she will show us how individuals and teams can move from reactive busyness to meaningful focus, and how we can build cultures where belonging doesn't just require burnout. Lauren, over to you.
Thanks, Lerato. I want to welcome you all to the cult of busyness. And admission is actually free. All you have to do is ignore your priorities, your common sense, and you've just got to know the secret greeting, which I think will be familiar to you all. It's, how are you, busy? Oh, yes, I'm busy too. I'm swamped, I'm exhausted. That's all you need in order to get into the cult. So I'm sorry to say, you're all already members, card-carrying members without even knowing it. And so as Lerato mentioned, I'm going to be unpacking what I call this busyness syndrome that I think we all suffer from. I'm going to look at what is keeping us so busy. Why have we joined this cult? How did the cult even start? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how that is actually not working for us anymore, and then offer just a couple of ideas of how we can start doing things differently. And so I want to start with a quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is a mindfulness professor. And he said, our lives are unfolding faster than the human nervous system can manage well. And so what he actually is meaning there, if I just take a quick little detour into neuroscience, is that our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, is in the driver's seat. And our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that we know to be the rest and digest system, is nowhere to be seen anymore. And that's not how our brain and body is designed. We are designed to have that sympathetic response when there's real danger, like a lion chasing us in the old caveman days, or in now modern times when there's a real physical danger to us. We want that sympathetic overdrive to kick in. We want to get to safety. And then the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. And we rest and we digest and we recharge. But we're not doing that at the moment. We are constantly, because of this pace we're in, our sympathetic nervous system is activated way too much. And so I think we speak quite a lot about what that's doing to our physical health. I think we know that, and I think there's a lot of work being done around what to do to try and mitigate that risk. But I want to also share what it's doing to our mental health. Obviously, as a clinical psychologist, that's where I spend a lot of my time. And doing mental health coaching in organizations, I see the impact on mental health continuously. And we don't really talk about it, and we don't actually know how big the impact is. So I'm just going to share some numbers, because I think numbers actually really tell us the truth. McKinsey did a study in 2023, I think it was, and they said that depression and anxiety levels globally have increased by 25% since 2020. And so if you think about we're now in 2025, 2026, those numbers are even higher, I can assure you, with the pace of life and the stresses and the strains that we've been exposed to. 69% of executives that were interviewed in a Deloitte study indicated that they're thinking of quitting their job because of their well-being, because of the impact on their mental health. And another very scary statistic is that at the moment, 40% of all absenteeism within a workplace can be attributed to mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, burnout. They're not always reporting it as that. When they call in sick, it's often I've got a tummy bug or flu. But when interviewed, they said they were actually struggling from a mental health challenge. So the numbers are scary. This is the pandemic we're in. We got out of the COVID pandemic, but we're in a mental health pandemic. And it's not going to stop on its own. I know there's a lot of factors contributing to it. It's not just our busyness, but I think the way we are living our lives and the way we're approaching work is definitely a core factor contributing to the mental health challenges. So let's first understand why. How did this cult come about? How did we become unknowing, unwitting card-carrying members to this cult? Well, if we just start, I love looking at language, at words, and if we just start with the word business. If you think about how it's spelled, there's the core of the word business has the word busy in it, except it's with an I, not a Y. So they kind of hid it in there. It's a trick. Because actually, it's the nature of a business to be busy. A business, an organization, a workplace, its job is to do things, to do actions, to set goals, to meet targets, to make money, to stay relevant, to keep changing. That's what an organization has to do. And yes, there's a huge amount of work that we do have to do from a systemic issue that's happening in organizations. And I do a lot of work around that. But for our purposes today, I want to talk about the individual, how we are potentially contributing to make that business, the busyness of the business, worse, how we're fueling it, and in a way maybe enabling some of the unhealthy patterns that we see. So I also want to take us a little bit back. In my podcast, which is called Beneath the Busy, I did an episode on the history of exhaustion, because it's one thing to look at the language of it, but I've been so fascinated of how did we get here? Why is exhaustion and busyness seen as a badge of honor? How's it become a measure of how worthy you are? And it goes way back, but where it particularly took root in our Western culture was in the Protestant era with the Calvinistic mindset, where it was literally inculcated into people that to be hardworking meant you were a good person. And it was a sure straight ticket to heaven. So being productive, adding meaning, being valuable, being busy, essentially, actually started to carry moral virtue. And so we walked around telling people how productive we were, how hardworking we were, and we were rewarded and acknowledged for being a morally good person. And think about the saying that we grew up with, which is, idle hands are the devil's work. So no wonder resting feels scary, because the devil's going to come and get you if you slow down, if you pause. And so not much has changed since then. I think we still unconsciously sit with this driver of, I have to make the best use of my time. How can I be the most productive? Because we have come to believe that that means I'm a person of value. Then on top of it, we have our culture today, just the information age. That's all I'm thinking about, never mind everything else and all that tech is doing to speed things up. But just from an information overload perspective, we are bombarded with 105,000 words a day. That's 23 words a second that are coming into your brain that you are mentally and emotionally having to process. And so that alone is keeping us busy, because we've got our tweets, and well, that's not tweet anymore. We've got our X's, we've got all our other social media content, we've got our emails, we've got our Slacks, we've got our WhatsApps. It's coming at you from every single direction. And that's keeping us switched on all the time, because we have to keep up with all of these messages, all of these words that we have to process. And then lastly, what's contributing to this cult and this is a little bit of a counterintuitive aspect, it's actually the wellness industry. The wellness industry itself, whilst the intention is good to tell us to exercise more, to eat healthily, to get our 8 hours of sleep, to drink more water, to meditate, to do yoga, all of those things are absolutely crucial to our physical and mental health. The challenge is the wellness industry isn't teaching us how to do life differently. It's just saying, live your full life, be busy at work with all the demands, be busy with your personal life, and then find the time. You have to make the time to exercise. If you really cared about yourself, you would make the time to fit in your exercise, your journaling, your meditating. I mean, think about it. I've coached multiple senior executives who are waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning so that they can get to gym, so that they can have their gym session to then make their 8 o'clock meeting. That's absurd, because that wake up early and gym, which is spiking your cortisol levels, is actually counterproductive. It's doing worse for your health than having that 2 hours of sleep. Not consistently, but it is contributing to our sense of burnout. And on the other hand, if you're not doing those things, we're left sitting with a feeling of guilt or shame. What's wrong with me? I know I should be doing these things. I just can't seem to find the time. Clearly, there's something wrong with me. And so that guilt and shame psychologically impacts our mental health and contributes to burnout. So if you are doing all those kind of healthy habits and it's working and you're not feeling burnt out and overwhelmed and absolutely exhausted, keep going. You're doing a great job and clearly you've made it work. But if you're not, I'm not telling you to never do those things. I think what we need to do is just look at it differently. And we have to start structuring life differently so that we can include these habits, these behaviors in a healthy way. So that's how this cult came to be. What sits underneath it, and this is where my work really sits in the psychology space, is looking at our unconscious beliefs, our limiting assumptions, the templates, the patterns, the things that we unconsciously hold on to that drive our behavior. And unless we start unpicking that, it's very hard to change this habitual busyness that we found ourselves in. And so the biggest lie of busyness, again, if you look at the word belief, right in the middle between the BE and the VE is the word LIE. So not all beliefs are lies, but a lot of them are. And I think the beliefs we have around busyness, the core one is that busyness equals worthiness. That's the biggest lie. That we think that the busier we are, it means we're more in demand. We're more valuable. People need me. Look how important I am. And so if I'm busy, I'm doing it right. And if I'm not busy, well, then there's something wrong with me. The other belief, I think, where a lot of people are sitting, and in a lot of my coaching conversations and workshops that I run, people will just say to me, but it is just the way it is. Everybody's busy. Everybody's exhausted. This 24/7 availability is just what's expected in the world of today, with hybrid working, with the tech that we have, with just our lifestyle. So, who am I to complain? I've just got to keep going. I've got to keep up with the pace. So we've come to normalize something that is absolutely abnormal. And to drive home the point of how abnormal it is to believe that busyness is just the way it is and we have to accept it, I just want to talk about one small aspect of lack of sleep. So if we're so busy trying to fit everything in and we're not getting enough sleep, the research has shown that if over a consistent period of time you get less than 5 hours of sleep a night, that induces the same cognitive impairment as a blood alcohol level of 0.1%, which is enough for you to be pulled over for drunk driving. So lack of sleep is directly impacting your cognitive capability. And here we think pushing harder, adding more hours, pushing through, working harder is going to actually make us more effective. Physiologically, I can tell you, it's eroding your cognitive functioning and it's making you less effective. And just think about how ridiculous it is. You would never say, oh, she's such an excellent leader. She comes to work drunk all the time. She doesn't know what she's doing because she's half, can't remember things. We would never praise somebody for showing up like that. And yet we continuously celebrate people who are sacrificing sleep for work and saying she works all weekend, she's always on, she's always available, she's so dedicated. And so how do we get out of this? Because I've painted the picture of what it is. I'm sure this is resonating. It's not so easy to just say, okay, well, I'm going to stop being busy. I'm sure maybe you've tried. And everybody says to me, it's just busy at the moment. This is a very busy period. When this period's over, then I'll be able to slow down. And then I laugh because I meet them 3 months later and they're like, no, now's a really, really busy period. It's really, really busy. And then I'll say, but you said that last time. And they're like, no, but this got even busier. So that belief or that idea that it's going to get quieter at some stage externally and then we can slow down is never going to happen. It's just, as I said, the nature of business, the nature of the organization is to keep going. There's always going to be projects. There's always going to be deadlines. It's never going to stop. So that's the one thing, is environmentally, we can't just stop. But internally, what's happening is that we've actually become addicted to this busyness. We've become addicted to the adrenaline and the cortisol that is activated when we are so busy. Think about those adrenaline junkies. They keep doing more and more crazy things to get that adrenal surge. That's what we're doing with work. We don't feel alive if we're not busy and kind of on edge all the time. And so resting starts to feel actually quite scary, quite strange, because the body is still wired. And you can't, to rest, it feels like there's something wrong. I'm not doing something right. This is very uncomfortable. We're also addicted to the dopamine that the busyness is giving us, because you tick off something on your to-do list, you answer an email, you achieve a task. All of those actions that we're doing release dopamine in our brain. And dopamine is that reward center that is activated when we do drugs, when we smoke, when we gamble. All those things that lead to addiction rely on dopamine. And our addiction to busyness is giving us these constant dopamine hits. And then workaholism is actually the only addiction that is socially sanctioned, because we actually reward people for being workaholics. We praise them for the long hours put in, for the dedication, the commitment. They're so motivated and engaged. And so we are afraid to slow down. Firstly, our body doesn't know how. And secondly, psychologically, we're afraid of that silence. Because what are you going to find there? What thoughts, what feelings, what things in your life maybe are you not confronting that you've used the excuse of, I'm just so busy, I'll deal with that later. And so busyness has become a way of just distracting us. And so workaholism is a real thing. It's a real addiction. And I want to just read actually the definition, because I don't want to get it wrong. And there's some core elements that I think are important that you know. It's being overly concerned about work, driven by an uncontrollable work motivation, and investing so much time and effort to work that it impairs other important life areas. I think we can all fit into that category. Oh, I don't know who I'm speaking to necessarily, but all the people that I engage with can definitely tick all of those boxes. And so we've got to get out of the survival mode. We've got to find a way to start letting our parasympathetic nervous system take over, be in the driver's seat more often, and let that sympathetic nervous system do what it's supposed to do. And so, as I said earlier, I approach it quite differently to others in the wellness industry. I'm not going to tell you to eat more, exercise more, sleep more, meditate more. Those things are fundamentally important. But I believe that those things should become part of our personal hygiene routine. It's just part of what we do. It's not self-care. If I ask you what you do to take care of yourself, you don't say, well, I brush my teeth every morning or I shower. We just do, we make time for those things every single day, hopefully, because we know if we don't, we're going to be stinky and we'll have stinky breath. And it's the same thing with these healthy habits. If we don't do them, we're going to be stinky in the world. We're going to be grumpy. We're not going to be our best selves. Cognitively, we're not going to be at our most effective. And so how we need to approach these healthy habits is by starting to believe how important they are and not having to find the time, because you're not playing hide and seek with time. It's not hiding over there behind the couch. You're never going to find the time. We have to deliberately, intentionally make the time. But if we don't shift what's going on internally, what's underneath that waterline, we're never going to make that choice. Because you can go to the gym, you can drink all the water, take all your vitamins, but if you don't deal with what's going on in your head and your heart, you're still going to be unhealthy. And even those healthy habits can start to become just another thing to achieve. And with all the bings and bongs and ticks and dots that you have to complete and the challenges you have to achieve, it just fuels that all the time. So really, overworking isn't the answer. Putting in more hours is not the answer. Getting more busy is not the answer. Trying to add things on and on and on and stretch the day. People are always saying to me, I wish there were more hours in the day. Well, there aren't. We've got 24 hours and that's not likely to change. Even with AI, cannot extend the 24-hour day. So we have to start doing things differently. And so there's about 5 things that I work with people on to start shifting this mindset around the busyness. And it starts with protecting the asset. You are your asset. You are your biggest asset. Without you, there's no job, there's no career, there's no money, there's no house, there's no nothing. So you have to start being as strategic with yourself as you are with your work. You have to start owning and believing that you are important enough to invest in. And if you think about the one word that actually really triggers me is this work-life balance, because that completely fuels this unhealthy behavior. Firstly, there's no such thing as balance. So it gives us this completely unachievable goal. You can never get it completely balanced. Work and life will never be completely balanced. But more importantly, think what it's doing to us. That concept is saying we have to balance life with work equally. Work is equally as important as the rest of life. That's absurd. We have to say, I am the most important. And how does work fit in around that? Then we have to give ourselves the permission to pause. We have to start training our body to know that pausing, slowing down, resting, recharging is not bad. You don't have to feel guilty for it. And so obviously we need to rest. So sleep, proper downtime is an important pause. But I'm also just talking about micro pauses through your day. Just pausing for a moment before you join a meeting and think about who's going to be in the meeting, what's it about, what are my thoughts on the meeting, thinking about what do I want to do next, pausing to just notice a pretty flower, pausing to greet someone, pausing to actually taste the food you're eating. So being more present and just really thinking about what do I need right now. And the other permission to pause I really want to invite you to do is to take lunch. Again, think how absurd it is that we've come to think it's normal to eat at our desks. Firstly, it's unhygienic because your keyboard gets full of food. I mean, that's just gross. But secondly, you are entitled as a human being to take time away from work and go and eat your lunch. Start with 15 minutes a day. Just give yourself that time to eat lunch away from your desk. Then we want to treat recovery not as something that you've earned or deserved, but as a core part of what actually fuels good performance. You know, we often say, oh, enjoy your leave, you've really deserved it, or you've earned your break. Why do we have to deserve it? Why do we have to earn it? It's a core part of what makes us continue to show up effectively. And then there's 2 things I really want you to stop doing when you have conversations with people. The one is stop telling people how busy you are. Let's just start changing the language because it's become an easy default. As I said, the greeting into the cult. How are you busy? Try something else. Just challenge yourself to not use the word busy, because our language also creates our reality. So if we keep telling ourselves we're so busy, or if everybody else is so busy and we're not, and we've got to pace that, it starts creating our reality. And then please stop making these casual comments to your colleagues. When somebody leaves work on time, please don't say, oh, you're working half day, are you? Because you're the martyr working till 8 or 9 at night. And if somebody does take lunch and they walk past you to go and get their lunch, please don't say to them, oh, it must be so nice to take lunch. It's almost those kind of comments fuel it and make people feel bad for doing what is actually naturally important to our body. And then the hardest part, and this is where the deeper work really comes in, is starting to learn how to separate your worth from your work. Your identity is not what you do and what work you do. And once we start identifying as just a human being with multiple interests, multiple strengths and weaknesses, work starts to take less of an importance in our lives. So pausing, resting, recharging, it's not lazy. The devil's not going to come and get you. It's not self-indulgent, and it's not a luxury. It is a strategic part of making sure that you continue to show up as the best version of yourself. And if you're in a leadership position, it is a core leadership competence for you to be well so that you can continue leading well. And so I guess just by way of wrapping up, what I really want to say is, for the love of your work, please take a break. And I really encourage a concept of healthy excellence. So I'm not saying that we're going to give up our goals and our ambitions and that we can't still want to achieve great things and be highly motivated and driven. Of course we want to do those things, but we have to redefine what excellence means, and that it cannot be excellent if it's at the cost of your health or anybody else's. So healthy excellence means it's excellent, what I've done is excellent, and I'm still healthy, mentally and physically. So maybe the answer isn't to expect more from yourself, but it's actually to be more gentle with yourself. Gentle enough to rest, gentle enough to know that you can't carry it all alone, gentle enough to reach out for help. And so if what you heard today resonated, I would love to come and spend time with you, your team, your organization, and share more of my insights, my experience, just about how we can learn to live and lead and work in a much more sustainable and sane way. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow. Lauren, my goodness. I had so many moments where I was like, wait, tell me more. Oh my goodness. Blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. I loved where you started with it all in terms of just the genesis of the culture, where it comes from, what's informed it over the times, and how it's mind-boggling that we are still so entrenched in that culture. And if anything, it just feels like it's getting worse and worse and worse. And now we're getting equipped with more tools to take home. But wait, there's more. There's more ways in being effective. There's more ways to cover the work. You can still do it from home. You can still do it from a boat, you know? And so thank you so much for sharing those realities and also just some solutions along the way. In fact, as you were talking, I was taking down a couple of notes, and I thought to myself, because I'm such a practical person, and I'm asking not just for the viewers who are watching this, I'm also asking for myself, because I recognized myself along the way there as you were talking. So I think you spoke about taking pauses. I think moments of rest, moments of recharge, those micro pauses. In a culture where the organization does not really reward, encourage, or recognize a lot of these, and people shy away from delivering on these or taking the rest or recharge because of that slacking word or the taking half days mentality, I believe that influence starts from the top. Positive influence starts from the top. So the question perhaps is, how can leaders model healthier ways of working so that their teams feel permission to do the same?
that is the core challenge, and that's the core of the work that I do. So I focus specifically on senior leaders, because if they don't believe this and they're not role modeling it, as you say, it's very hard for the people beneath them to actually start believing that this is this is possible. And so when I work with leaders, the core thing is getting them to realize that they are not effective when they're so busy, that they are actually being less effective and having a negative impact on their team. Because when they're role modeling that busyness, what they are actually saying to their team is busy, frenetic, hustle work is more important than quality, than impact, than prioritization. And we become less and less effective. So it takes a bit of time for leaders to realize that they have to start taking care of themselves before they start leading well, or in order for them to lead well. And I often say what often gets leaders to shift their mindset is when I talk about the nervous system, like the physiology, the practicality of it. Because our nervous system energy is contagious. So if as a leader I'm in that sympathetic, always on wired state, people pick up on that. They catch that. And that's how the team then operates. And so as a leader, if you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system more often by role modeling breaks, by role modeling pauses, by managing workload appropriately, then people pick up on your calm. That's also contagious.
So there's an expectation to unlearn and relearn. There's a call for conscious leadership, activated conscious leadership constantly, because of the wiring that exists, that is hardcore and that is embedded in our psyche. So there's a lot that we have to unlearn and relearn. Thank you for that. The other question I wanted to ask is, as it relates to just the organizations or the organization in its entirety, what are those telltale signs that let us know that an organization is moving towards a culture where belonging doesn't require burnout?
Oh, there's a lot.
Okay.
I think the word that's being thrown around a lot, and I think it's a good one, is psychological safety. Yes. I think we have to start creating a space where people feel okay to say that they're not coping. Am I answering your question?
Yes. However, there's a lot of people that look to work in certain places because from the outside, the brand just looks really remarkable. Financially, the brand is doing well. Brand positioning is A-okay. But how do I know that that brand has devised healthy ways around their culture and the ways of work? So when I walk into that environment, are there any telltale signs that I should strategically be looking out for? Are there questions that I should be asking as I'm being interviewed? What should I be looking out for to know that that organization is conscious? It's a conscious business.
Okay, I love that. So it's how can you practically pick up if this is a psychologically safe environment? I often talk about the smell of a place. It's like when you walk into a building, you get a smell, you get a sense of what is this building like. And I mean, often you can't be sure, but I think, the kinds of questions you need to be asking is, how do you view workload? How do you resource your projects? How do you create space for people who aren't coping? What support is available? What happens if I need help on a project? What would happen? And I know that people are like, but you can't ask that in an interview up front. For me, if you can't ask those questions, or you're afraid that you're going to get judged for asking those questions, then that's not your organization. Because the organization that does those things, if they don't have the answers, they'll definitely engage and say, well, we don't know, but this was our support structures. Most often we only end up asking about, do you have an employee assistance program, or what are your values? And those are just kind of surface level things. You really want to know, how do you treat your people? Do people take lunch every day? Do people end work? Do people end work on time? What kind of expectation is there about weekend work? So I think it's those kind of, how do the leaders, what's their philosophy around well-being? And one of my favorite things, which is not very popular, but I'm really trying to inculcate that into businesses, is encouraging people to take mental health days. So are we allowed to take mental health days? So I don't have to be sick in order to just have a day. Like, I just need a day just to decompose, not to go and do my shopping necessarily, or, go and hang out on the beach, or maybe, but it's really just more like a bed day. I need to just decompose. So you want to kind of ask for those kind of the softer stuff that we want to know. How do they treat people in their organization?
Beautifully answered. Lauren, thank you so much. Your keynote was absolutely impeccable. For those of you who are watching and are very interested in learning more about Lauren, please visit Speakers Inc. on www.speakersinc.co.za. And to book her, most importantly to book her, please email the team at info@speakersinc.co.za. Thank you very much for watching, and well done on your keynote, Lauren. Thank you very much.